Picture rep. And we are. Hey everyone, and welcome to Smart Moves. This is your weekly Smart News. I'm Setsuko, and I'm joined by my co-host Slicky. And not a whole lot to talk about this week. Well, sort of. There's one topic which is kind of a big deal, and that is the upcoming nerfs. We talked about this in our last episode. The Blizzard team is looking at several cards as targets of nerfs to help balance standard and wild, and they have narrowed down the decision and also announced the date for when the nerfs will be going live. So currently the nerfs are scheduled to go live on May 22nd. That is next week. And we do have the cards that got nerfed and how. So we'll take a couple minutes and just talk about what we think about the nerfs, and then we'll move into today's deck showcase. So first up, the only one here that is specifically targeted to help balance wild is Naga Sea Witch. So the team did decide to nerf this, and they moved it from a 5 mana cost card to an 8 mana cost card. So what do you think about that? I know you don't play a whole bunch of wild, but...
I don't, but that makes a lot of sense to me, because from what I understand, the big problem, much like with Spiteful Summoner, isn't the size of the minions that get summoned or how many, it's just how early they come down.
Yeah.
So the fact that you're now waiting until turn 8 means that now Psychic Scream is a viable option. Light Bomb is a viable option. Spreading Plague is a viable option. And, it probably won't solve the problem altogether, but it will give you time to prepare and maybe, kill your opponent before they can get it out. It'll make it a little bit weaker against, aggro and stuff. So.
Yeah, the big problem was turn 5, people were dropping Naga Sea Witch, and then they were playing, 1 to 5 or 6 giants, all on turn 5. And even if you have hard removals, there's no real way to answer that effectively that early in the game. So I think that this nerf makes it a deck that you can still play if you really want to, but definitely doesn't make it the soul-crushing deck that it has been so far. And something to note about Naga Sea Witch is it wasn't the strongest deck in Wild. It was just one of the most shitty and annoying to play against. And that is one of the big reasons that it got nerfed. So,
was Secret Paladin strongest, or?
I think Big Priest is still doing really well. There's several decks that are more powerful than Naga Sea Witch. Not to say that it wasn't strong. It was definitely a strong deck, but there are stronger decks in Wild. So, and then the other neutral that Blizzard decided to nerf was Spiteful Summoner, and they moved it up to 7 cost from 6 cost. I think that it's still going to be a card that sees played, because that's still a pretty powerful effect for as long as the pool of minions that are available to summon from stays small and specific. I saw a comment where someone said, I wouldn't be surprised to see a bunch of 10 mana cost cards in the next couple expansions with really shitty stats as a sort of soft nerf to Spiteful Summoner as well. I think if that happens, then maybe Spiteful Summoner will kind of slide out, but I think, and you can, correct me with this, because it's obviously, we're talking standard here, where the pool is much, much smaller. But I think right now, even at 7, you're still happy getting most of the things you can summon off of Spiteful.
Yeah. Well, the big buff, I guess you could call it, soft buff to Spiteful Summoner was when the old gods rotated out.
Yeah.
You lost Yashara. Well, Yashara is good, but you lost Cthulhu, which is 6/6. You lost Yaxaron 5/7. What was the other one?
N'Zoth.
N'Zoth was a 5/7, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. So you always had this chance of getting a 6 cost minion. So that was okay. It wasn't great. I'm not sure about this whole moving it up to 7 thing, because the problem, and I think I've talked about this before, isn't that Spiteful Summoner it's not that it's summoning something big, it's that there are all these cards leading up to it that you have to deal with, so you're like exhausting all your resources just to stay on board. Things like Cobalt Scalebane, and then on turn 6 they drop it and you're behind.
Hmm.
Uh, if you could keep up with them to that point, great, but then you're behind. Now, I don't know if there's something that people can play on turn 6 instead. For all I know, it might just be Boulder Fist Ogre. But there probably is something they'll just put in the 6th slot, and then they'll just play Spiteful Summoner on 7.
Yeah.
One of the benefits, though, is that it makes them have to draw one more card. And the more cards they draw, the more likely it is for them to end up drawing their spell. So that might be minutely helpful, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's definitely not a ridiculous nerf. So, but I do think the soft nerf in the form of having these high mana cost cards with crappy stats that maybe do have powerful battle cries or something like that in the next couple of expansions is a definite possibility. So,
Yeah.
that's still a couple months out, but we'll see what happens. So on the Warlock side, two of the potential cards that we're looking at did get nerfs. The first one here is Dark Pact. So it retained its mana cost and its effect, but now instead of restoring 8 health to your hero, it will restore 4 health. What do you think?
What do you think?
I think that leaving the combo intact, and well, let's just go ahead and bring up the Possessed Lackey as well, because this was part of the combo. It was either Dark Pact, Possessed Lackey, or like Dark Pact Cube. So Possessed Lackey did get nerfed from a 5 mana card to a 6 mana card. So once again, we've got another turn delay, just like we do with Spiteful Summoner. In this case, we're actually delaying generally to turn 7 instead of turn 6, because you normally do use the combo of Possessed Lackey and Dark Pact. I think the restoring 4 health instead of 8 health is a really big deal. Warlock has a lot of minions that they're okay with killing, and getting 8 health for 1 mana, and then also getting probably a positive effect off the death rattle or something of a minion that you have in play is a little bit too strong. And I think we were talking about it before, how warlocks, they've always needed like healing has always been a big deal, and then they got Dark Pact and the Spellstone and a bunch of crazy walls of taunts all in the same expansion, and all those things together just made it where if you didn't burn down the warlocks super fast, they're almost unkillable. And then you toss in Gul'dan with the hero power on top of that, and it's too much healing. So I'm actually okay. I like keeping this effect the same. Obviously, cutting the healing in half is a huge deal, but I think you'd still be fine with killing a cube with this thing, getting a little bit of health back, and getting all your crazy combos going.
Yeah.
So, but it just makes it easier for the opponent to hopefully burn down the Warlock. And the thing with Warlock has always been managing your health, because your minions damage you, but they're strong, and your hero power damages you, but you get card draw. And having all this healing just kind of made it like, yeah, that doesn't matter as much anymore.
Right. Yeah, I would definitely say this is kind of a good nerf, but the combo is still intact. But like you said, I mean, we haven't really gotten to that yet, but Possessed Lackey being bumped up a little bit more expensive, that's helpful. And I feel like that might also put more of the importance on the weapon itself, because now that they're going to be drawing more cards, they're probably going to be more often having a lot of demons in hand instead of in their deck, in that extra couple turns. And because of that, it's easier to counter, because you can just run weapon removal. But what I'd really like to see, just because I hate Warlock, is silence and destroy one of your own minions. That would be great.
Yeah, that was a suggested nerf. Yeah. So. Yeah, I like that too. I am a bit worried that this doesn't do enough. But the thing here is that you gotta think about if it does enough so that there are like aggro decks that can now run over Q block because of this one turn delay, then that's going to force Q block either to adapt and change their game up, or it's going to force them out of the meta a little bit. And then that's good enough of a nerf. Like if it still works, but it doesn't quite work well enough because there's a strong counter to the deck, then that can change up the metagame. So
What I think might happen, and it happens a lot of the time with a nerf, is people just stop playing the deck because they get annoyed that it's not winning as easily as it was.
yeah.
So I think we'll see a really stark drop in Warlock numbers right after the nerf, and then it'll slowly rise back up. So
Okay. And the Paladin card that they decided to nerf, I am glad they skipped Sunkeeper Tarm, was called Arms, moving it from a 4 cost to a 5 cost, which is a nerf we talked about happening. I think that, in the space of even an odd Paladin, obviously this is a hard nerf, right? Even Paladin can't play it. Odd Paladin can only summon 1-drops. So, okay.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, they can only summon 1-drops now.
Yep. So I think the real context of looking at this card and like, was this nerf enough in general, because Call to Arms is just such a crazy card, is, does this nerf do enough for decks that aren't odd or even Paladin?
Well, I don't think there are a lot of those right now.
There's, I think Murloc Paladin is a strong non-odd or even deck in Standard right now.
I haven't seen a lot of it. It might be, but mostly I just see even an odd cost dude. But I mean, it will probably become the main deck after this. So
yeah, well, this one, I mean, I still think, if you're playing in a regular, like, non-even odd Paladin, 5 mana, draw 3, play 3, still pretty strong, even if they are, 2-drops and 1-drops. So yeah, I think they didn't nerf it into the ground, and I'm glad because I do like the card. I think when we were talking about Kobolds and Catacombs, I was like, I think this is the card I picked as my favorite artwork overall, and it is just a cool Paladin card to have. So, and let's talk about the last card here. So this was on the list, the only card for Rogue. And they did decide to nerf it, and this was the Rogue Quest. And they've decided to nerf the reward for the quest so that for the rest of the game, your minions are 4/4 instead of 5/5. What do you think?
I think that's good. Yeah. I mean, because the 5 is kind of the hard mark now. Now that Fellfire Potion and Dragonfire Potion are both gone. All you got are Holy Novas, Flame Strikes, Blizzards, Duskbreaker.
Spreading Plague.
So what?
Spreading Plague is not a removal, but you can play it, and in this case, the 4/4s can't remove your guys with one swing.
Right. I think softening up the minions is a really good idea. Yeah, I mean, I think you could even play it with 3/3s, but probably people wouldn't. But I think it's good. I think it's now like you have a chance if you make it to that late game that you might be able to beat them. But the big thing, mostly, I wouldn't have even minded if they would have kept the 5 health, but if they dropped the attack to like 3, because the problem is normally just the burst.
Yeah.
It's they play a board, they bounce it, play a board, bounce it, play a board, bounce it. And so that's, they'll do 15, 20 damage in a turn with charges.
Yeah.
And I think changing primarily just the attack would be enough, but yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I don't know if this nerf is good enough. I think there's a pretty...
it's so sad.
Yeah. I think there's a pretty good chance that this is still going to see play at some point, and it's just a super polarizing card, right? If you play against aggro, like, they usually whoop your ass before you can get your quest done. If you play against control, like I don't know that the 1/1 is gonna matter enough. But maybe it will for the purposes of being able to remove the board, right? So if
Well, I
you're
think what they're kind of trying to do specifically is to help out control decks because that's who loses to it.
yeah.
So, and control decks primarily run even cost large removal. So, or even damage,
Yeah, yeah.
like blizzards, one flame strike, so on and so forth.
Yeah, that might do the trick, actually.
We'll see.
In Wild, there's still like a billion ways to get rid of the minions from the
Big
Crystal Core.
boards.
It's really just all the bounce effects and stuff where it's like, okay, well, I can remove your minion, but on your turn you can play it 4 times with charge.
Yeah,
And
I'm glad they didn't nerf Sonya because I feel like that's the whole revival of this quest.
yeah.
Well, that and the fact that so many other viable decks have rotated out. But I really like Sonya, so I'm glad that she stayed. She's such a meme card.
Yeah, it's kind of like Tarum, where I'm like, don't nerf that card because this other card is broken.
Yeah.
Just nerf the broken card into oblivion. I don't care. Like, just make it unplayable. I'm fine with that. I mean, look at Warsong Commander or Arcane Golem. Like, when's the last time you saw either one of those ever?
I saw one in an HCT tournament recently because it came from some random effect, and the guy almost won the game because he had Unleash the Hounds in hand, and he was about to get so much burst damage, but the guy killed Warsong Commander. It's the one time I had ever seen that card almost win somebody the game since it's been nerfed. Really
funny.
cool.
All right, well, that is the news that we've got this week. I will mention we are well into May, and I think we can expect, man, I'm already talking next expansion. We got like probably 2 months till the next expansion, so we're about halfway there. So that's exciting because I think I think most people are whelmed by Witchwood. I'm sure a lot of people are underwhelmed, but I think I'm just whelmed overall so far.
Yeah. Well, I really like the reset and the way that it rebalanced all the classes. Almost every class is playable now. You might not win, you might not get to, legend, but you can make a deck with like a 40-45% win rate with almost every class without that much difficulty, which I really like.
Yeah. All right, well, that's it for the news. So stay tuned if you're watching on Twitch for the deck showcase coming up. And if you're watching on YouTube, I'm sure you can find that on our channel.